Hey guys, so I'm Jessie. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm a fourth-year computer science major. I was abroad in fall, so I wasn't around until this quarter, for those of you who are freshmen. So today we're going to be talking about firewalls, basically like a brief introduction into what are firewalls, what are their capabilities, what are their limitations, a funny little story about the name firewall, and we're going to wrap it up at the end with a hands-on activity which Nathan will be posting on the Facebook group once we get to that point in the presentation, so that you guys can play around with access control for firewalls. Anyways, okay, so we're gonna start off with a little story. So back in the day, coal-powered trains had a large furnace in the engine room in the front of the very train, along with a pile of coal. And the engineer would shovel coal into the engine, but this process often created coal dust, which was highly flammable. And occasionally the coal dust would also catch fire in addition to the coal, and it would cause a fire in the front of the train. It would move its way back into the passenger cars. This particular one doesn't have a passenger car right behind it, but the fire would move into the passenger cars behind it, and since dead passengers reduced revenue, train engines were built with iron walls right behind the engine so that it stopped the fires from spreading into the passenger cars. But it didn't protect the engineer, unfortunately. But that was where the word, the name firewall came from.
Still doesn't.
What?
Still doesn't.
It still doesn't, no. I mean, yeah. Okay. Fun story. So what is a firewall? Basically, it's a network security system that controls all the network activity going in and out from the outside world into the inside world. It's kind of like a wall in between a trusted, secure network and an insecure network. So you can imagine a company would want a firewall around them, watching all the network traffic from the outside world in the internet so that they don't get bad things coming on into their internal network. And they exist as both hardware appliances and software run on computers. So it's important to talk about both the capabilities and the limitations of what a firewall can do, because in security we want to make sure we know how strong things can be, but also what the weaknesses can be. So the capabilities of a firewall are that they define a single choke point. So basically, if all of your network traffic is coming through one place, then you can put a firewall at that place, and it defines a single place where all information must be looked at before it passes through into your internal network. And it also provides a location for monitoring other types of security events, not keeping track and logging what types of activities are going on through your network and the outside world. And it's also a convenient platform for other types of internet functions, such as NAT and usage monitoring and IP security VPNs. But it's important to talk about also the limitations. So it cannot protect against attacks that bypass the firewall. So for example, as we see at the bottom, a laptop, a PDA, a portable storage device of some kind, a cell phone, goes into an internal network, and it's a bad apple, and it does something, and it's considered trusted already. Well, if the firewall isn't protecting against and monitoring what type of devices are looking or are passing information through the network, then bringing something physically bringing it past the firewall then makes it so that it could be a potential threat. And then also internal threats. So if somebody is considered trusted, maybe an insider who, Edward Snowden, for example, a firewall couldn't protect against him doing things on the internal network, or a bad employee who's angry or something like that. And also, if you set up your wireless local area network incorrectly, then that also a firewall doesn't help you, doesn't protect against you. Before we get into the specifics, I want to ask a couple questions just to a little chit chat or whatever and get some participation. So does anyone know what a network packet is? Yeah.
Basically a bunch of headers that encapsulate the protocols. At the top there's where it's going, and underneath there's I forget the precise layers, but
That's okay.
At the base level there's Wireshark over the internet.
Yeah.
There's one that
Yeah.
Underneath there's the Pease into the application.
Yeah, so that would be like what the header would look like for a packet. And like a network packet in general is just like information in like a pod, basically. Like imagine like I'm sending a message to Christina, like I could send her, by saying something to her, I'm like sending her a packet of information. And she like knows it comes from me, and she knows it's going towards her because I'm talking to her. Okay, so like I was just gonna also ask, does anyone know what an IP packet header looks like? You kind of answered the question. So here's like an example. The things I want you guys to look at in particular are the protocol, the source IP address, and the destination IP address. And those are things that we're specifically going to be talking about today that firewalls specifically look at. They can look at more, but those are 3 things we're going to be looking at today. Okay, does anyone have any questions so far? Anyone confused? Please ask questions in the middle. I don't care. Just raise your hand, yell at me, say, hey, you. Okay. So we're going to talk about 3 different types of firewalls. The first is packet filtering, stateful firewalls, and then application level. We're going to go more in depth into packet filtering and a little bit into depth of stateful, and then just glance over application level firewalls. Okay, so starting with packet filtering. So here's a good graphic of what I was kind of talking about earlier. So you have your world, your outside world, your untrusted network, and then you have your firewall protecting all of your machines on your internal network. So packet filtering basically applies rules to all of the packets that we just talked about, the IP packets, coming through the wall and says, okay, based on their source and destination IP address, their port, their IP protocol, and their interface, to either drop them and not let them go through, or to forward them on and let them go through. So the source IP address is like, where did it come from? The destination is, where is it trying to go? The port and the IP protocol is like, what protocol are they using and what port are they on? And then the interface is whether or not they're on, the message is going through from the outside or it's going from the inside out. So firewalls protect both directions, or they can protect against both directions. So they can also scan information or scan packets that are trying to leave your network as well. So the interface is, what side are they on? What side are the packets going through? Okay. And yeah, we said the last thing. So like I said, there's 2 default policies: discard, which means prohibit, I thought I said permit, prohibit them, and forward, which means permit and let them through. Now, packet filtering is like pretty simple. It's not super, super smart. You set up a list of rules, but there's a lot of limitations of just packet filtering. So for example, it can't prevent attacks on like application bugs. So if there's information going on the packet, maybe it's like once a person receives the packet and they like open up the information, there might be something bad happening there. There's limited logging functionality. It does not support advanced user authentication, and it's also vulnerable to attacks on TCP IP protocol bugs. So if there's a bug with the actual protocol itself, which just happened, then it doesn't protect against that. And improper configuration can also lead to breaches. Okay, so those are the most like simple. You just look at a few things. Do you let it through based on the different information, or do you not let it through? Yeah.
Don't things that send like full files, don't they go as a series of packets?
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Yeah, so you wouldn't like, yeah. Like people send a series of information through different packets. Yeah. Okay. So the second type we're going to talk about is stateful firewalls. So stateful firewalls are basically packet filtering plus a little bit more. So they review the packet header information, but also keep track of the connections that are being made. So if I like ping Christina, and then I ping her again, and I ping her again, and I ping her again, and I ping her again, then her firewall out in front of her, protecting her, would be like, okay, Jessie's tried to ping me like 10 times in 10 seconds. Like maybe at that point, we might want to start being suspicious. So it keeps track of how often people are sending packets, and also keeps track of whether or not, like, when we're having a connection, if it's a new connection, an existing one, or not part of any connection at all. So this like really tightens the rules, and it can like help prevent against like penetration attacks and things like that. The problems can like come up with this are that if your logging gets bogged down all by like one person, just like sending a whole bunch of packets all at one time, then you might not be able to keep track of other packets coming in. Depends on like how big and how like robust your logging functionality is of the packets coming towards you. Okay, any questions on that one? Yeah.
In regards to like not part of any connection, is that like UDP packets where you don't actually have
Like you don't know.
recognition?
Yeah.
Or whatever, so it's like there's no handshake going on, it's just like a random like ping packet?
Yeah. Yeah, it just kind of comes out of nowhere. Or maybe you don't have a record that it was ever a connection, but it like was like a while ago. It just kind of got lost in cyberspace and then ended up there again later. Yeah. Okay. So last, we're going to touch on application level. Basically, it's also a deeper look into packet filtering. I don't know a ton about this one, so I'm sorry, you can do a lot more reading, but it becomes a lot more smarter because it knows about the like how information is sent using different protocols so that it can see if like specific packets are doing fishy stuff, like if they're trying to bypass a firewall on another port, even though they're not technically that type of packet, you know, I'm not exactly 100% sure. It's basically just like sketch muffin stuff, like looking deeper into what information is being sent in the packets. Okay. So we're going to also chit chat about like where you would want to base your firewall. And I completely forgot to ask somebody. Zach, how do you pronounce that first one? Bastion? Okay. So Bastion hosts is basically like the picture we showed a few slides back, where there's like one big wall that's like robust against the world of the internet, protecting a whole bunch of like internal computers. So it's a critical strong point in a network, usually outward facing towards the public, and it must be able to withstand the most amount of penetration. And then we have host-based firewalls, which are used to secure an individual host. So basically, there can be different layers of firewalls. This is kind of the idea. Like you can have like multiple in front of like one machine or multiple machines. So host-based would be to secure an individual host. So it's kind of like the Bastion host, but not protecting like against like the outside world, but like for a lot of computers, maybe just like one system or like one little area. And you can tailor the filter rules for specific host needs from both internal and external attacks. So maybe, for example, Mark Zuckerberg's like office might have like a host-based firewall because you don't necessarily want internal threats like people working at Facebook to be able to do things to his system, in addition to people in like the internet world. And then a personal firewall is one that you can set up on your personal PC workstation. And so it's like localized, and there might be software that you can just download to do this. Your DSL router does this at home. And the primary role is to deny unauthorized access, but it also may monitor the outgoing information your computer is sending to protect against like other people, like you spreading malware or worms to other people. So yeah, okay. So we kind of talked about this a little bit before, but basically a firewall can do like 4 things to a packet. We talked about the fact that it can forward it on or it can drop it. But to get more specifically, if it accepts a packet, it does go through and it forwards on, or it forwards it on to like the next level. There might be another level it has to go through, another set of rules, but it moves it forward. Dropping it just like drops it off the face of the earth, like didn't like, nope, you can't come in, but it doesn't send any information. Rejecting a packet, you send a little message to the to the source IP saying like, oh, I rejected your packet because X, Y, or Z. And then finally, logging can be done with all 3 of these. So basically, this is like kind of like stateful when you're keeping track of what packets you're seeing. You can also log when you've dropped things or rejected things or accepted them, and keep track for yourself. Okay. So we're getting near the point where we're going to be doing a hands-on activity, just so you know. So Nathan, you can post it. But basically, an access control list is your set of rules where you can make rules about what IP or what packets you let through and which that you do not. So yeah, it determines if a packet is dropped or forwarded. They can be based on, the rules can be based on source, destination IP address, port number, and protocol in the example that, or in the hands-on activity we're gonna do. And then more advanced firewalls can have more complex rules such as application level information, et cetera, like we talked about earlier. One thing to keep in mind is if you guys want to participate, I'll answer your question in a second. If you want to participate in the hands-on activity, that when you make your list of rules, like your access control list, that IP or packets, when they come in, they look at the first rule first, and then they work their way down. So your first rule is the one that it will look at first. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. And anyone else who wants to? Max, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if you know, is it common for or is it even significantly, does it happen ever kind of zero-day exploits in stuff like IP tables deny, where it's people can just,
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sorry. Do you know the answer to that question?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I don't know, has there ever been kind of stuff happening where, say, I don't know, so for example, IP tables has parsing a source IP getting buffer overflow or something like that. Just O days in actually IP tables drop that just you get around it.
Just in firewalls in general. Yeah, sure. Right, that's just like there's programming errors in any kind of software. Firewalls are not immune to that. Hopefully that they aren't, or that their
but my question
functionality is so minimal that you might be able to reason about its security better. But yeah, sure. In fact, there's been a couple of classic TCP/IP-based attacks, not based on firewalls, but based upon the TCP/IP stack and how things are implemented. For example, it doesn't make sense for certain flags to be on at the same time. They're mutually exclusive. There was a version of Windows that if you sent a TCP packet that had all the flags turned on, it would crash the operating system. So it was like a Christmas tree attack.
Okay. So for those of you who want to participate, this is the website. Zach showed this one to me a couple weeks ago, and it's a really good place to go play around. I'm trying to exit my slideshow. It's not working. Okay, but I want to say one more thing too before we do this hands-on activity. So for my senior project, I'm making curriculum-esque stuff for EPIC, which is the engineering camp for high school students every summer. And one of my modules that I'm creating is on network security and firewalls in particular, with that being a little subset of it. And so I want to practice a game if anybody's interested in playing afterwards. We can go play here or out there, it doesn't really matter, but I'm interested in seeing how it's going to work logistically. So if anybody wants to play after we do this other stuff, that would be really awesome and nice. Thank you. So yeah. Also, my references, I got a lot of information from my professor at KTH, which is in Sweden, from fall, and then Wikipedia, and then the US Naval Academy page.